students. It's just super being here, and I hope that you have all recovered after your week's holiday, your week's break, and done some catching up too, no doubt, as we all have done. Ideally, I would have loved to have done a case discussion with you, because you've all just finished your assignment on law, and it's such an interesting, important section of work. But I just feel that to do a case discussion on Google Hangout would be frustrating for those of you who have been able to come to the links, and it would have just been perhaps more of a frustration. But that would have been a lovely way of wrapping up the law section of Praxis and Classroom. Please remember, that's a very important section of work, because what happens is more and more teachers are expected to know the consequences of their actions, or the consequences of children's actions. So it's no longer you just teaching in your classroom and the bell rings and you go home. It entails so much more. And if you've got the knowledge, you're going to be set up for life. And I just want to thank you for the brilliant assignments you did on law. And I honestly think that some of you, using your initiative, could in fact market your brochures to your school headmasters. You could actually go along and say, you know, this is something we've had to do, and perhaps it would benefit every staff member to have a copy of your hard work that you've put together. So give it some thought. Those of you who've got business heads, perhaps think about benefiting in a financial way, but it's certainly going to be worth every moment of having that brochure with you. Keep it in a file at school, so that when something happens, you are able to grab it and make some headway and understand what they're talking about. Of course, your union is very good too, but I do think it would be worth your while to have that stashed away somewhere safe in your classroom when you're teaching one day. So this evening, instead, I've decided to tackle a section on assessment, which is one of the big sections of work that we always do in schools. And I'm hoping that the topic that I've chosen is on rubrics and on assessments. And very often we skip that. We tend to sort of say, you know, we'll do it later. We skim over it because it changes so much. So this evening, my thinking was, let me just take you through some rubrics. Let me guide you in informative and summative ways of assessing, so that, you know, again, I've been quite alarmed at the level of rubrics that have been set in schools. And now with the new CAPS documents, of course, each publisher very proudly puts out a standard rubric for reading or a standard rubric for spelling. And then you see it, and you absolutely, well, I can't believe that they can, you know, have such a general kind of rubric for each section of work. So my encouragement to you tonight is just to go through this with me, and hopefully it'll help you to be more effective when it comes to doing rubrics. I find it's also very interesting because many people don't understand the importance of each of those aspects. And what's even more alarming is how many schools are not even using rubrics. So I'm hoping this video I'm going to start with, I'm hoping that it's going to help you to just as an introduction into formative and summative assessments. And then I'm going to guide you through some rubrics that I've brought. And I've tried to bring some odd rubrics, you know, really sort of offbeat ones, so that you can look at them and realize that we can assess just about anything. And then my ending is a little bit on assessments. And finally, I've got an amusing little PowerPoint, video for you at the end. So I'm hoping it's a worthwhile exercise for those who've come out in the cold, and for those of you who have joined us this evening. And bless you all. So now I'm just going to take that out. And off I go. The first one I'm going to look at is the PowerPoint on assessment and grading. Okay. So I've got to mute it.
No, you can't.
Not? Oh. Sorry. Do I go here? It played beautifully just now. It still says live. Do you think it could be the reason?
Okay. Is it
Yes.
video?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. I didn't realize that.
There we go. Why isn't it ready? Strange, because it did work. Thank you. All right, so we're having fun here. It did work just now, but I know I'm doing something wrong, so just please bear with me. My apologies. We're going to try again. Here's the experts. So we're going to click on, there it is. Where is it? Thank you. Got that. Thank you.
One of the things that comes up when you get into a differentiated class, let alone one that's standards-based, is you have to begin to weigh formative versus summative assessment. Now, summative assessment is actually anticlimactic. It really refers to post-learning, after all is said and done. So the final declaration, usually there's not a lot of capacity to go back and revise one's efforts and be assessed and accredited anew. But one thing that teachers forget is that something that was intended to be summative, child does poorly for whatever reason, you're allowed to make it a formative assessment. Something that was summative now becomes formative. That's actually okay. It's within your prerogative. But what about formative assessment? Well, of the two, teachers tend to spend the majority of their time designing their summative assessments, as if that was the most important aspect. But really, it's formative assessment. That's the most important aspect. It has the greatest impact on student achievement, on feedback to the teacher, everything. The whole enterprise of teaching and learning really boils down to that formative assessment. Can kids learn without grades? Yeah. Can they learn without formative assessment and the feedback that comes from it? Not at all. So we want to emphasize that. In fact, I would suggest that teachers spend at least the same amount of time, if not more, designing formative assessment instead of summative assessment. But what is this formative assessment? Well, formative assessment obviously is the ongoing assessment, it's the checkpoints along the way. But here's the kicker. The best formative assessment actually involves descriptive feedback. Not just, hey, thank you for finishing on time. No, it was you had your supplies, you were able to do this and this and this, and that helps all of us. It's kind of like Jim Fay and his Love and Logic books, Point and Describe. National Association of Secondary School Principals and many other folks who are into assessment talk about three aspects of descriptive feedback. You help the kid discover, or you point it out yourself, what was the goal, what was the original intent, the objective, where are you in relation to it, and what are we going to do to close that gap? Three different parts of good descriptive feedback. When a kid can take that and use it, we find that formative assessment is any assessment that's done where the kid is allowed to revise his efforts in light of that feedback and then be assessed and accredited anew. Perhaps there's some relearning in there as well, but it's ongoing, and that's the focus. If our focus is summative assessment, students don't learn as well. Dylan Williams, one of the great researchers in this, he did this wonderful manifesto, Inside the Black Box, Paul Black. And man, it turned America on its ear. In 1998, we started looking at formative assessment and started transforming schools. So how do we give feedback to kids? Is there formative assessment in my lesson plans? In great lessons, I should be able to circle the formal formative assessment and feedback going to students. There's also informal, where you observe, maybe get some feedback right there in the spur of the moment. But I should see lots of checks for understanding and kids getting that feedback. In fact, Bob Marzano and many others talk about the effect size, the impact of some decision. And it turns out the effect is much greater if you do an assessment and there's going to be descriptive feedback. If there's no feedback, it turns out the assessment, the tasks, the assignments don't have much instructional value compared to when there's feedback. So the same planning breadth, as I design my assessment, I'm going to design how will students get feedback on this, and how will it inform my lessons. In fact, I should be able to walk down a hallway and stop a teacher cold. They don't know I'm coming. They don't know the question's coming. And say, how did formative assessment inform one of your decisions today or this week with a student, a subset of students, or a class? And the teacher should feel very comfortable. I found out this about these students. I decided to do that. That's one of the big pillars of differentiated instruction. And it turns out classes where teachers focus on formative assessment, test scores go up if you use that as an indicator. But really, mastery, student achievement, it all goes up. And again, I wonder, what goes unlearned because a teacher didn't get into, didn't understand, didn't apply formative assessment principles?
Okay, I just hope that that short video, I hope you'll watch that again, because really what was being said there was just the importance of getting that feedback. And a mark isn't necessarily just feedback.
Switch the video off.
Video is the off.
Yeah, that's a screenshot.
All right.
Go to the video there.
And no, not cancel, okay?
There.
There.
Yeah, oh,
Let's click on there again. And there.
yeah.
Should we not be going there? Yes.
No.
I think it's there, right. Yep.
So random. No.
It's got to be there to stop.
Stop.
Yeah, right?
Okay.
Should we try?
No, go there. Click twice.
There. How's that?
Okay.
Are we okay?
Yeah.
All right, so I'm sure you can all hear me. All right, just give me a show of hands, please, so I can confirm that you can hear me. Thank you. Brilliant. So this evening, what I'm going to start with then is, in terms of giving feedback, yes, verbal feedback is good, but how much better if we're using our rubrics effectively? How much more meaningful will it be for the learners if we are actually giving them more direct feedback via the rubrics? And I know rubrics take time, granted, but it's a lot more, there's a lot more to it once the students have got their feedback. Once they've got the rubric, they can see exactly what your descriptors are saying. So let's look now at some of the suggestions I have. So I'm going to go to my PowerPoint. Would that be the one or the one lower down?
Yeah.
There.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so I'm going to start with this one.
That's going to cut the board.